Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul. In this video we're breaking down episode 6 of The Last of Us. The latest entry is packed with Easter eggs, tons of callbacks to the game, and also a big cliffhanger ending that we're going to be explaining the outcome of in this video. We'll save that until the end as always, as it has some major game spoilers in it. I'll of course give you a heads up before we hit that section as always. However, for this episode, they do hit a part that didn't actually get fleshed out properly until the second game. I'm not going to be giving away any massive spoilers in terms of the story, but I think it's important to talk about how it at least looks similar to that. So if you don't want things like the bar we see in this is the bar in the second game, then I'm sorry for spoiling it there, and I hope you join us again next week.
See you, chump.
Now, the entry has a major reunion with Tommy and Jackson, and though this happens in the first game, they actually have the reunion in the town that appears in the second. When you arrived there in part 1, you were primarily at a dam, which the people of Jackson were repairing to power the town. We see this location in the episode, but we don't get the shootout that happens there in the game. You didn't venture into Jackson, and it was only in part 2 that you saw the town for what it was, which is perfectly recaptured here. Now in the game, this section actually takes place in the fall, and thus there's none of the snow that we see in this entry. However, part 2 starts off in the winter, with the town covered in a vast blanket of it, and you even have a snowball fight early on to learn the mechanics of the game. This is referenced later on in the episode when we get the tour of the town, and we can see some kids playing in the background. I think they bumped the timeline of the show up to recapture the look of Snowy Jackson, and there's several landmarks there that we'll talk about later on in the video. Also, it's important to bear in mind that in the game, the community hadn't really been set up yet, which is why you were creating a power source through repairing the dam. Now we pick up with a flashback to last week in which Henry took his own life after shooting Sam. In the game, you immediately cut to black after that, and I think they went back to this in the intro to mirror it in the show.
It's all your fault! Henry, no.
Oh my god.
Give me the gun.
We get an immediate time jump, and The Last of Us did this after several deaths, most notably Sarah's. On the HBO podcast for the show, they said that they added in the burial scene to show how much Joel had now become a parent. Joel wasn't the kind of person that would stick around and bury the dead, but he did this for Ellie so that she could grieve and grow. There was talk about how kids have it easy because no one's relying on them, but Ellie had Sam very much relying on her. Neil Druckmann said that Joel remained at the grave because he realised he couldn't go through this again, and after watching another kid die like Sarah, he struggled with getting attached to Ellie. Now we also see some dead rabbits being taken in, and the winter chapter of the game started off with one hopping along before it was then shot by an arrow with Ellie.
That's the cutest fucking thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
This is someone who's returning home to his wife, and we know from the cast list that the character is called Marlon. Played by Graham Greene, this is actually a new character for the show along with his wife Florence. He discovers that Joel has her at gunpoint, and they've been living out in the wilderness together. The whole setup here seems pretty alien to what you'd come across in the game, and I think they've done this to sort of mirror Bill and Frank. We have an elderly couple that have managed to stay together through the apocalypse and carve out what's likely been a relatively peaceful life. The scene is played for laughs, and we quickly realise that Joel and Ellie are terrible at interrogating. Now this is actually riffing on a scene from the game that uses the same tactics, but it's way more bloody in the source material. Joel says,
"We're somewhere here. Exactly where? And your answer better be the same as your wife's."
You wait here. Where? In the town. Now you're gonna mark it on the map. And it better be the same exact spot your buddy points to.
Now Marlon also has a bow and arrow, and this is a weapon that you use throughout the game to stay stealthy. He brings up Cody, and this is the location that Joel thought Tommy was located at earlier in the season. However, we learn that it's teeming with infected, and thus it makes sense why they moved from there. Joel's been desperately searching for his brother since then, and this is why he's had to resort to holding up two lovely people in a cabin who always probably hit the thumbs up button. Now with them comes an ominous warning not to cross the river.
But you never go past the river here.
What's past the river? Death.
Now in Jackson, they play up that they use his reputation to keep out stragglers, but I actually think they might be teasing some people from the game that we'll talk about in the super spoilers section. Anyway, they haven't heard of the Fireflies, and outside, Joel has to take a rest. We don't really learn what this is, but the last couple of months have been hell on him, and this comes full circle at the end of the episode. This is a new addition for the series, and Joel didn't deal with any of the health problems that we see him getting here. He did, however, get stabbed like what happens in the end, though this was on some rebar instead of the hunter's weapons. Anyway, they head out after taking one of her rabbits, and this is slung up on Ellie's backpack, whereas in the game she ties it to her horse. They set out across the landscape, and I love shots like this where you actually get to see the beauty of it. Reminds you of just how long this journey is and how far they have to travel. They go from cities to forests and mountain ranges, and the game did this too, with it constantly feeling like you were never in the same place for too long. Now they mistakenly think that they've reached the River of Death and decide to bunker down for the night. We see Joel applying duct tape to his boot, and this is something that he of course did to Tess in episode 2. Now though this scene doesn't appear in the game, it was actually originally meant to, and this moment is based on concept art that was created for part 1. In it, Joel and Ellie sat around the campfire and shared stories like what we see here. When discussing it, Neil Druckmann said, "That was a moment we couldn't make work in the game. So that was a conversation I had with Craig on how do we capture these downbeat moments." Thanks for coming on the show there, Neil. Now the pair's dishes return from the camping scene in episode 4, and they share a drink, with Ellie doing the usual face you'd pull anytime you had some alcohol when you were 14, which I never did anything like that. Now Ellie starts to think about the future, and she talks about what they're gonna do after the cure is made. The pair have been so focused on getting to the Fireflies that they haven't thought beyond it, but here they really start to look towards the future. Joel says he wants an old farmhouse where he'll raise sheep, and this actually has somewhat of a tie to part 2, along with what Ellie says. We won't spoil it until the end of the video again, and say it with me, super spoiler section. But Ellie talking about astronauts in space will likely have a payoff too. Anyway, Ellie confesses that she rubbed her blood onto Sam to see if it would save him, and it clearly has her doubting whether she's actually the saviour. Joel once more stares at his watch and rubs it, and we've talked about this in our prior breakdowns. He does this whenever he thinks about Sarah, and it happened before they just reached the Boston State Building. He glanced down at his watch, and this is something that was then carried over to the show. When he was watching Henry and Ellie play football, he also did it then, and I love how this motif keeps reappearing throughout the series. Obviously, the watch doesn't work, and it's more of a reminder of the life he lost. However, it's also shown that Ellie could be a second chance for him to be a dad, and he switches in this moment to be nicer towards her. He reassures her that Marlene knows what she's doing, and we can clearly see a major change in Joel. It's also important to bear in mind that they don't mind starting a fire here, whereas in episode 4, they of course avoided doing it. Hunters wouldn't really be out this far, as they tended to stick near the cities, and the infected also froze when they were in these conditions. In part 2, you come across some frozen stiff, and they very much tend to stick to warmer areas. Now Joel has slept in, and Ellie's taken the second shift, showing how much more independent she's becoming. She carries his rifle, and in the game at the hotel, Joel ended up giving this to her so she could provide sniper cover as he took out hunters. The podcast for the series talked about the scene in which he gave her the gun in episode 4, and this was very much a moment of Joel becoming a father once more. Like any parent, he's given a child a skill that they feel they can now do on their own, and thus Ellie's taken it upon herself to stand guard with the gun. It's also important to bear in mind that Joel's deafness is clearly putting them in a vulnerable position. In episode 1, he didn't hear Tess coming in when he was asleep. We had the whole thing with Henry and Sam, and now he's not even hearing Ellie getting up. You can see he's starting to doubt himself, and at the end, he doesn't hear the hunter sneaking up on them. They make their way across a bridge, and once more we assume that this is the River of Death. I think we will see something like this in episode 7, and finally get that sweet, sweet River of Death. Let's pray. And we also get a play on the scene from the game when Ellie tries to whistle.
Shh, I'm learning how to whistle.
You don't know how to whistle?
Shh, does it sound like I know how to whistle?
Are you all right?
I'm trying to learn how to whistle.
You don't know how to whistle.
Well, does it sound like I know how to whistle?
They then come across the aforementioned hydro dam, which was a location you had to navigate to get past. Ellie couldn't swim, and you had to jump in the water and use a board to navigate her so she could build a bridge for you. On the other side of this, you came across a child's grave, and this was potentially played upon last week. Joel also says that Ellie's no Will Livingston, and this was the guy who wrote the amazing 5-star reviewed pun book. And after guessing wrongly that this is the River of Death again, I'm starting to think Ellie should start saying "through time" for the amount of she talks. Anyway, they're ambushed by people on horseback with their guns drawn. Dogs are brought in to smell if they're infected, and in Jackson, you actually got to pet one when you were going through the dam.
That's Buckley. Not much of a guard dog. But he's good to have around.
That's a good boy.
Now, when facing off a group of enemies, a lot of them would also carry dogs, and they'd sniff you out as you moved about areas. Jackson is its own settlement away from Fedra, and thus it doesn't have the government technology like the scanners we saw in episode 1. So they have to use dogs to smell cordyceps, but it doesn't flag up on Ellie, probably because it's been nullified or it's mutated in her. Now here we meet Maria for the first time, who we learn is Tommy's wife. She gets a far more fleshed out role here, and in the first game you just had a couple of words with her here and there when you arrived at the dam. The show actually adds an extra dimension to their relationship and they make her pregnant, which is something that wasn't in the game at all. Now they hit the front gates, and these are modeled to look exactly the same as how they appear at the start of part 2, in that you ride in on horseback, which is of course also how they get in here. As they enter the town we see 2 signs, and the first of these is the Lights Festival. This was advertised for 2003, which again is a reminder of when the world collapsed in the show. Jackson was lit up with lights for part 2, and this came off the back of the Hydro Dam that you helped to power up in part 1. We later on see these being used as lights through the town at night, and this sign's a nice bit of foreshadowing to set that whole thing up. Now to the right, we can also see the Tipsy Bison. This was a location that 2 appeared in part 2, and this is very much just the creative team laying the groundwork for what's coming. We'll talk about what happens there in the spoiler section, but I did warn you there'd be things like that the bar is the same as the other bar. Now Ellie sees 2 important things as she rides in. The first is a woman in a wheelchair, and the second is a bunch of kids at school. In the game, the reason that Henry and Sam fled Hartford is because once Fedra abandoned their posts, they often fell into the hands of raiders who refused to care for kids or the elderly. Here though, we see the Jacksonites will look after the weak and infirm, and it shows what kind of civilization that they're trying to build. As we mentioned, in the game they hadn't got it set up yet, and Joel, bloody Joel, he was actually the more optimistic one, thinking they could make a new world.
You still gotta deal with infected though, right?
Who doesn't? But it's the world we live in.
Or maybe you don't have to be.
Now Joel sees Tommy working on some scaffolding, and this changes things up from how it happens in the game.
Don't even think about reaching for your weapon. Tell the girl to drop hers now.
Ellie? Do as the lady says.
Tommy!
Oh, we didn't know the place was occupied. We're just trying to make our way through.
Through to where?
They're all right.
But you know these people?
Know him. He's my goddamn brother.
Tommy.
Holy shit.
How you doing, baby brother?
We kind of combine the guns being drawn and Tommy being amongst them, whereas in the show we get the riders and then them taking them in. As I keep mentioning, this happened at the dam because Jackson wasn't a location they'd made for the game. And damn, it's gonna get annoying when I keep pointing that out, but on we go.
We've been here just a week, and it feels like forever.
Now this video is sponsored by Manscaped. If you're looking to upgrade your grooming routine, then I highly recommend you check out the Manscaped Platinum Package 4.0. Now the king of this package is the Lawnmower 4.0. The blades have got this advanced skin-safe technology that stops you from getting nicks and cuts. It comes with a 4000K LED spotlight so you can light up your face as you're shaving in the dark. It's also got this travel lock function, so if you're on the go, it's not going to set off in your bag, and it's also waterproof, so if you like to shave in the shower, then this is the trimmer for you. They also have the Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer, does a great job, use it all the time, probably shouldn't be doing this on camera, but always works a treat getting rid of those nasty hairs in your nose. Now a grooming routine isn't complete without applying the Crop Preserver and Crop Reviver before showing off your 2023 self. These unique formulations take part of the smelliest part of your body and they'll give you that confidence boost you need to make this the best year ever. Now the Platinum Package also comes with a 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner, body wash and deodorant. To complete the set, Manscaped also threw in the Shed Travel Bag so you can take a kit with you wherever you go, and they're also going to give you some anti-chafing boxer briefs as a free gift. These products are the absolute perfect follow-up after your gym session or if you're just going for a big walk or anything that gets you sweaty. I don't want to know. However, what I want you to know is that Manscaped are giving 20% off and free shipping, and all you have to do is go to manscaped.com/heavyspoilers and enter heavy spoilers at the checkout. That's 20% off, free shipping. Just go to manscaped.com/heavyspoilers and enter heavy spoilers at the checkout. Time to save and shave with Manscaped. Thanks. Now, the official HBO podcast brought up that Joel very much has it within him that he needs to protect his family, and going back to the conversation in the truck, there were hints towards this. Joel talked about how he only followed Tommy because he wanted to keep him alive. I think this is very much the same in the case of Ellie, and he's the kind of person who needs to be a protective father figure. This is due to Sarah's death, which has shaped his personality, and he now thinks that he has to protect his family no matter the cost. Now, they end up hugging, which appears in both the show and game, and Joel says he's came here to save him. He is of course starting to believe in the vaccine, and as far as they're concerned, they're on a quest to save the world. Now, like what happens in the game, they're offered food by Maria.
Why don't we bring him inside?
Yeah. You hungry?
Starving.
We get a chow down on a proper meal, and we get what I think is a cameo from a character that pops up in part 2. We'll discuss her later on, but she's clearly seeing what's going on with Ellie, who doesn't act like the rest of the kids in Jackson. Tommy and Maria announce they're married, and it kinda calls back to this moment from the game.
Maria is family, actually.
Oh shit. Congrats.
Ma'am, thanks for not blowing my head off.
Would have been embarrassing, considering you're my brother-in-law.
We all gotta get wrangled up at some point.
Now, they get a tour that, more foreshadowing for season 2, and we see sheep tying back to the farm that Joel talked about around the campfire. It seems like the perfect home for them, and Ellie meets the horse Shimmer, which is also the name of the horse that she rides in the games. What? Come on, that's not really spoiling stuff. She has a horse. Anyway, I love the realization of Tommy realizing that they're pretty much communists. He of course had this view of the world, but in order to survive, he's had to alter his principles to fit it. Also, before you start calling the authority for British values or whatever, I'm not a communist. I think it's interesting how he's had to adapt to a different way of life to survive. I'm guessing that they're trying to say that Fedra and the Raiders are capitalists, as they're all out for themselves and trying to exploit people, but we're getting a bit deep on the political theories there. Anyway, they hit the Tipsy Bison, and Tommy has to crack the ice because the machine probably uses too much power. This whole place is covered in snow as well, so they can just grab it from there. It's a bit of an icy reception, and I see it's clearly uneasy between the pair. Now we get some stuff that pulls from the game.
Doesn't seem like you age much.
You, on the other hand.
Let me look at you. You get fucking old.
Easy. It's gonna happen to you, too.
And the kid?
Oh, yeah. She's the daughter of some firefly muckety-muck.
Girl must be important. What is the deal with you? You some bigwig's daughter or something?
So you know where they might be, these fireflies?
Why bring her here?
I was supposed to deliver to the Fireflies. The way I figure they're your boys. You finish the job, you collect the whole damn payment.
I haven't seen a firefly in years.
They got a base down at the University of Eastern Colorado. It's a week's ride south.
What makes you think I'd do this for you?
This isn't for me, Tommy. This is for your damn cause.
My cause is my family now. You ain't talking about some walk in the park here.
Jesus, boy. Have Maria get some of your born-again friends to do it.
They got families, too.
Maria's a few months along now. So I just gotta be more careful.
Now, we've often talked about how Joel pushes things to the back of his mind so he doesn't have to face the truth or inflict pain on others. In the game, he refused to tell Bill that Tess had died, and even kept up the lie that she was back in Boston.
What kind of trouble are you in? Where the hell's Tess?
It's just a job. Simple drop-off.
I needed to take care of that. Relax. So, you didn't answer my question about Tess. Yeah, I thought the two of you were inseparable.
She's busy.
Yeah, sure. Busy. Sounds like there might be trouble in paradise.
Oh,
Yeah, something like that.
He does the same thing here and pretends that everything's all good with her.
So how's Tess?
She's fine.
I think he does this because talking about her death means that he has to acknowledge it happened, and with this brings the pain of their loss and also the feeling that he's failed. At the dam in the game, rather than talking about Tess, Tommy brought up Sarah. He said he'd actually gone back to where they lived in Texas to visit their old home. He picked up a photo of Joel and Sarah, but Joel didn't even really want to look at it, and he dismissed it pretty quickly.
Here. It's a little faded, but it still looks pretty good.
I'm good.
You sure? I mean...
I said I'm good.
Again, this is the character completely broken but refusing to accept it because he doesn't want to deal with the pain that comes with loss. He lies and says that he was heading this way and just so happened to pass by Jackson, when we know that he's been searching for Tommy for months and months and months. His plan all along was to get Ellie here, but we see in the end that he accepts she's his responsibility. Now, we really see the difference between Tommy and Joel at this point when they discuss what they had to do to survive.
They're very protective of this place. And for good fucking reason. I mean, folks find out we're up here.
No, I heard. Wrong people might show up. So is that what I am? Am I the wrong people?
This is how you gonna repay me, huh?
Repay you?
For all those goddamn years I took care of us.
Those things I did, Tommy, those things that you judge me for. I did those things to keep us alive.
We did those things.
Took care. That's what you call it? I got nothing but nightmares from those years.
You survived because of me.
It wasn't worth it.
They weren't things. We murdered people.
I bring you the cure from mankind, and you want to play the pissy little brother.
And I don't judge you for it. We survived the only way we knew how. But there were other ways.
We ain't back in Boston. You lay your hands on me again, it won't end well for you.
Go grab some supplies and be out of your hair in the morning.
Tommy sees it as murdering people, whereas Joel sees it as being something that he had to do to survive. That's how they talk in the game, surviving. Joel's selfishness and need to keep things that he wants is something that's a theme which repeats throughout the story, but in all honesty, I think most of us would have done the same thing. People would like to think they're the good guys who would make sacrifices if the time called for it, but a lot of us will happily step on others to keep going. Joel to me very much represents the true face of humanity, whereas Tommy wants to be something better. Now this new outlook has likely been brought on by the fact that he's gonna be a father. In their relationship before the outbreak, Joel was the one with the kid, whereas Tommy was the one with no responsibilities. He'd be the one off down the bars starting fights and showing up to his brother's house looking for breakfast. Here though, he's now the father, and the one who is seen as being the father is left without a kid. Sarah was supposed to have so much ahead of her, but this was robbed from both her and Joel for this worse world. Tommy says,
Just because life stopped for you doesn't mean it has to stop for me.
And this is of course reflected in his watch, which stopped the second Sarah was shot. Now outside, things get too much for him again, and he ends up having to rest. Again, all this is new for the show, with it not really appearing in the game. I think when you're playing as the character, you don't really think of health problems and stuff because you're very much them. However, Joel is in his 50s and he's been travelling on the road for months and months with very little rest and food. He's sleeping in on the mornings, having to take his time and slowly going deaf. He's not a sprite young chicken anymore, and this adds a lot to the character. He also sees someone that he believes is Sarah all grown up. I'm sure anyone who's ever lost somebody can relate to this moment, and you often do see strangers that you think could be the person, even if it's impossible. Joel has a brief moment where he forgets everything's lost, and it's almost like he's seeing Sarah grown up, happy with the life she should have had. It's pretty devastating, and it explains why he wants to hold on to Ellie. Now from here we cut to Ellie, who's holed up in a child's room. The pictures on the wall and colour in general are of course meant to evoke Sarah's from episode 1, and we're slowly seeing the two become more similar and similar. Later on when Joel comes in, we see a giraffe poster on the wall, mimicking the giraffe toy that appeared in Sarah's room in the game. He also walked past one in episode 2, and giraffes are very important, so keep an eye out for them. The room also has a really great poster in, and we can catch Creep by Radiohead. This is a song about being an outsider, not feeling like you belong, and it's very much representative of how Ellie feels. Now in Jackson, there were several houses that were obviously owned by people who died on Outbreak Day that people ended up filling. This is very much the case here, and Ellie gets a note saying, "I'm across the street." This is written on homemade paper, which I remember having to do back in primary school in some art and craft lesson. Obviously, they don't have Dunder Mifflin in this world, so if they want to make notes like this, they have to either get some paper from 2003 or make their own. We next see Ellie touching a purple and white hoodie, and this is what she wore from the damn pod onwards. Now lastly is the cap to deal with her periods, and we of course saw her looking for one in episode 3, which was her risking her life. I'm not no expert on this stuff, but with it being rubber, I'm guessing it's reusable, so she won't have to go into any basements anymore. Now Joel's a man, so he probably doesn't think about these kinds of things, and that's why it's given by Maria. Ellie goes to her house, and this looks similar to the layout of some of the houses that you'd come across when walking around Jackson. We then get a moment that's a pretty big gut punch once you realise what it is. On a chalkboard we see two names with a set of dates below them. This belongs to Kevin and Sarah, and this is very much the pair's gravestone to mark their passing. Now Kevin's a new character for the show, and we see that he died at the age of 3, 2 days after the outbreak. We learn Kevin was Maria's child, and it shows why she makes a bond with her, whilst also showing why Maria doesn't want Tommy running off. Maria instantly goes into motherly mode and makes sure that she has a coat to keep her warm. She also cuts her hair, and if you've ever played the Walking Dead Telltale game, then you'll know he did a similar thing in that with Clementine so that she couldn't get grabbed by the undead. We learn that Maria was a district attorney, and this explains why she's kind of shifted into being a sheriff. She's clearly accepted the loss of her child, and she's a complete opposite to Joel due to the fact that she's happy to talk about Kevin. It's at this point that Ellie learns about Sarah, and suddenly the penny drops. One thing I love about the podcast is that they've really delved deep into the fact that Ellie's looking for a parental figure just as much as Joel is looking for a surrogate daughter. This is why Ellie smiled when he beat up the soldier in episode 1, and why she said last week that she was scared of being alone. Now the two very much have this father and daughter relationship, but in this world it leads to them enabling the other to carry out terrible things. This was very apparent in the Brian scene in which Ellie allowed Joel to murder him. Neil Druckmann said that in any other show or movie that she would try and plead for Brian's life because killing him was the evil thing to do. However, Ellie knows that Joel has to do it, and thus she just walked away with her back turned. She's clearly defensive of Joel and won't let Maria badmouth him or warn her about what Joel's really like. Now Ellie clearly ends up feeling betrayed by Joel's plan to ditch her, and in her mind she built up that he was going to be her dad. We see this reflected in the next scene in which we cut to the people of Jackson watching the movie The Goodbye Girl. Now theatre screenings is something that we discovered happened often in the city, and there was one that was going to happen during the super spoiler section, which we'll talk about later. Anyway, the movie actually has a lot of allusions to what's going on in the story right now. It involves a single mother moving into an apartment with her daughter and her actor boyfriend Tony. He gets a job in Italy, and he ends up subletting the apartment to a man named Elliot, who's played by Richard Dreyfuss. The mother Paula and he start a relationship, and over time the daughter Lucy becomes attached to Elliot. However, he gets a job in Seattle, and Lucy worries the same thing is gonna happen with him that happened to Tony. This is of course reflected in Ellie, who believes that Joel's ditching her like all the other people in her life. So far, she's had several parental figures, including Fedra, Marlene, Tess, and Joel, and bar the last one, they've all been people she's left behind. Now Joel ditching her in the next scene is a mirror of how Lucy felt in the film. In the end, Elliot takes the job, and it seems like he's gonna be gone forever, but he asks Paula to restring the guitar that he left in the apartment. He left this back there because he means to return, and it ends on a more hopeful note, just like how Joel decides to take Ellie. Joel is also a keen guitar player too, and I love the similarities between this film and the arc in the episode. Now Ellie notices Tommy leaving, and we cut to Joel at a workbench trying to fix his shoe. Workbenches in the game are where you do upgrades at, but here they set the scene for a difficult conversation between Joel and his brother. Tommy brings him some new boots and apologizes for going off before, which is when they launch into a really deep moment. This pulls somewhat from the game, and in that they kinda combine the bar scene with what we get here.
She's immune.
Immune to what?
What? Ellie. She got infected, but she didn't get sick.
Come on.
I know, I've seen her breathe enough spores to take down a dozen men. And nothing. Now, I wouldn't have believed it neither. But I can show you.
I saw her get bit myself. That was months ago. Months. She's immune.
All right. I'll bite. Why bring her here?
From the beginning.
Supposed to deliver to the Fireflies. The way I figure they're your boys. You finish the job, you collect the whole damn payment.
I haven't seen a Firefly in years.
You know where they are.
It was Marlene. She hired us to smuggle her to some Fireflies.
What makes you think I'd do this for you?
You want me to take her? I'm just gonna get her killed, I know it.
I'll take that girl of yours to the Fireflies. You don't have to worry about it.
I'll take her out at dawn.
It's best this way.
Well, maybe some real good will come of this.
Joel tells his brother the story of how they got there, and he goes over Brian in episode 4. He's realised he's too old for this shit, and it makes Joel reevaluate what kind of impact he's going to have on Ellie. She's had to shoot someone because of his actions, and he also froze when Henry had the gun pointed at him. He feels like she's better off with someone else, and the death of his daughter clearly still weighs over him. He says he's weak, that fear is causing his heart issues, and overall he's plagued with nightmares of what could go wrong. This is a side to Joel that we've never seen before, and watching Pedro cry brings a whole new layer to the character. In the game, he was very sure and determined, whereas here we see how broken he is. I think losing a child in the way he did would make you doubt yourself so much, and with another kid being entrusted to him, he just feels like he can't measure up. Tommy accepts the job, but as we learn, Ellie listened to this conversation and she's heartbroken because of it. She's a fucking idiot though, isn't she? Ellie, everyone hates her. What do you mean she's behind me? Now in the game, Tommy doing this caused Maria to kick off, and it was at this moment that Ellie grabbed a horse and left.
If anything at all happens to him, it's on you.
Yeah, it's a lot more subtle, and Tommy returns to the screening, and Maria instantly knows what's going on. There's no words between them, and it's a really nice moment in which you can see her having to deal with the fact that her child's father's putting his life on the line.
Joel,
What is it?
that girl of yours, she took one of our horses and rode off.
Damn it. Which way?
Come on,
I just saw her riding on out of here.
go back inside. Help the others clean the place up.
Okay, be careful out there.
Now in the game, when Ellie ran off, you had a bit where you followed her horse tracks until you found her holed up in a house. On the way, you fought some raiders, just to vary the moments up because, you know, after all, you are playing a game. Now once you killed them and the raiders in the house, you got a scene in which Joel had a heart-to-heart in an upstairs bedroom, like what happens here. They just kind of combined the locations to make the bedroom Ellie's bedroom, and like I keep saying, Jackson was in the first game, so this house scene couldn't have happened. It couldn't have happened at the dam.
Is this really all they had to worry about?
Is this really all they had to worry about?
Boys, movies, deciding which shirt goes with which skirt.
Boys, movies, deciding which shirt goes with which skirt.
It's bizarre.
It's bizarre.
Tommy knows this area.
Oh,
better
fuck
than...
that.
Well, I'm sorry. I trust him better than I trust myself.
Stop with the bullshit.
I made this decision for your own good. You'll be way better off with Tommy.
What?
Maria told me about Sarah.
Ellie?
And
You are treading on some mighty thin ice here.
I'm not her, you know. Maria told me about Sarah and...
No.
I'm sorry about your daughter, Joel. But I have lost people too.
I'm sorry about your daughter, Joel. But I have lost people too.
You have no idea what loss is.
You have no idea what loss is.
Everyone I have cared for has either died or left me.
Everybody I have cared for has either died or left me.
Everyone fucking except for you.
Everybody fucking except for you!
So don't tell me that I would be safer with someone else, because the truth is I would just be more scared.
So don't tell me that I'd be safe with somebody else, because the truth is I would just be more scared.
You're right. You're not my daughter.
You're right. You're not my daughter.
And I sure as hell ain't your dad.
And I sure as hell ain't your dad.
And we are going our separate ways.
Get it together. We're not alone.
Now come dawn. We're going our separate ways.
And if I say no?
Do you even realize what your life means?
Listen,
Why are you here?
I came here to talk to you.
No, why are you still here?
Well, I guess we're both disappointed with each other then.
What do you want from me?
Admit that you wanted to get rid of me the whole time.
After this moment, we see Joel thinking back to Sarah. He remembers them decorating the tree at Christmas, and we get a long shot focused on a dove, and this symbolically means peace and love. These are two things that Joel's lived without for quite some time, and he clearly has a change of heart as he's waiting at the stables for Ellie. Unlike the game, he gives her a choice of who to go with, but she immediately chooses him. I think this is why he ends up collapsing at the end, beyond the stab wound, because it's very much his worst fear coming true. He felt like he'd be a liability and that he couldn't protect her. This is kind of proven right, as he does leave her in a very vulnerable position come the final scene. Now they say their goodbyes, which takes us into the university section. This too pulled from the game, and it was at this point that we learn more about Joel's past in which he wanted to be a singer. This too is reflected in the scene when they arrive.
Well, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a singer.
Shut up.
Why is that funny?
About you. What'd you want to be?
Well, when I was a kid, I used to want to be a singer.
Shut up.
No, serious.
Sing something.
No.
Come on, I won't laugh.
I don't think so.
Joel, please.
You gotta sing something now.
No,
Come on now, I'm not gonna laugh.
you're already laughing.
Okay, true.
Either way, he's clearly starting to trust Ellie more, and we see them practicing with a makeshift shooting range. These moments are obviously because he doesn't know how reliable he's going to be, and thus he wants her ready for the dangers she could face. I think from this point onwards that there's a real change in Joel and Ellie's relationship, with them bonding a lot more.
Everybody loved contractors.
Anyway, they reach the University of Eastern Colorado, and Ellie points out the mascot like what we get in the game.
Oh, with the bighorns. What does that mean?
Team mascot?
That's a giant ram. You guys were like some idol worshippers.
When it came to sports, hell yeah.
They also come across some monkeys, like what we see in the episode.
Are those monkeys?
Must be from the old labs.
Look at them go.
Aw, are those monkeys?
Yeah, a whole mess of them.
Now the game had you realizing that the Fireflies had abandoned the place because there was infected there. At one point you had to drop down into some of the dorms, which were teeming with clickers and a bloater that stalked the hallways looking for prey. It was such a good moment, and I think my biggest criticism of the show is that they've skipped over a majority of these scenes which really stand out in my memory. There was the bit in the skyscraper, the hotel, and now this, which I think are the things that I think of first when looking back to the game. Seeing how well they handled the clickers in episode 2, it made me really excited for moments like this, but unfortunately they again skip over them in the favour of other things. It's possible that they were infected here, as we do see sandbags piled high blocking one of the doorways, and that could explain why they moved on, but there's no tense scenes like that. Either way, the outcome's the same, and we see some Firefly symbols spray painted on a sign before they reach the biochemical labs. Inside this you found x-rays and scans of the infected, and discovered that this was where they'd been trying to manufacture the vaccine. Having this would of course give the Fireflies a lot of power, as they'd be able to distribute it to who they see fit, and thus they could very much decide who lives and who dies. Now firstly, Joel and Ellie enter a main hallway, and this looks similar to where Joel collapsed in the game, in that you were ambushed by bandits and he was impaled by some rebar after wrestling with one and falling off a balcony. Joel and Ellie find a list, and this is similar to the ones you'd come across in the game when visiting the area. I did actually wonder whether this university was the one they modelled the game after, as the environments are so similar down to the staircase and the rooms. They also bring across the moment in which you think the infected might be inside, and this is revealed to just be some monkeys. Jesus. The monkeys were very important to have around, as they're of course similar to humans on a genetic level, and it meant that the doctors and scientists could try out vaccines. Ellie also theorized that monkeys spread the cordyceps back in episode 2, so maybe was it 3? It was episode 3, so maybe it's just coming full circle from that. Now here they find a map with the location St. Mary's on it. This shows where the Fireflies have moved to, but it's interrupted by some raiders who arrive at the location. The attacker brings a baseball bat with him, which is a weapon you'd often use in the game. Joel strangles him and breaks his neck, which is also a move you could pull off when you grab people in this position. Nice little detail is that Ellie has her gun drawn here and is ready to shoot the guy like how she did with Brian. The pair make it out, but Joel ends up falling off the horse, which ends the episode like how this chapter does in the game. Joel's worst fear has come true, and he's now left Ellie in a very vulnerable position. Now at this point we hear an acoustic version of the song Never Let Me Down Again. If you cast your mind back to episode 1, then you might remember that we heard the Depeche Mode version of the song playing over the radio at the end. This spelled danger, and it's very much bringing the first time they set out full circle with this one. The song was about taking a ride with a friend that ended up letting them down, which is of course reflected in Joel here. Now his fate is left up in the air, and if you want to know what happens, then we'll be tackling it in our super spoiler section coming up next. I'll talk about that first before going into detail on the other spoilery Easter eggs, so you can check that out after if you want, or if you just want to know if he lives or dies, then this is the bit for you. You still here? Don't Joel me, hey? Right, let's go. So Joel is still alive, but Ellie has to go out and hunt for food and medicine whilst he recovers. In the game, you don't learn his fate for at least an hour, and it was agonizing playing through it not knowing what was going on. Now during this time, she ended up hunting a buck, and it managed to get away. However, she tracked it down, but this brought her into contact with David, who is from another settlement. Seemed like a nice guy, lovely guy, but he was a f***ing nightmare because he was a cannibal. Yikes. Now, they may be the ones who were past the river of death, as they were the people that I immediately thought of. The couple said bodies were found in the river and that some of these were infected, whereas others weren't. The cannibals could have potentially been dumping them in the river, and they may have travelled down past Jackson, who just decided, yeah, we'll steal their reputation. Might be wrong on that, but yeah, that's just what I thought when hearing that warning. Now, the constant mention of the sheep farm is a clear nod to part 2, in that Ellie and Dina actually end up having one, and this happens after they fail to kill Abby. Ellie gets constant PTSD flashbacks there of Joel's death, and this location being something that he wanted to do is clearly going to be something that will inspire the show's Ellie. Ellie also brings up Sally Ride around the campfire, and in case you don't know, she was the first American woman to travel into space. Now in part 2 we get a flashback in which Joel takes Ellie to a museum for her birthday and they look about the NASA exhibit. Now the Tipsy Bison is also a big part in this second game. After Ellie learns the truth about the Fireflies, she decides to cut Joel out of her life, but the pair of course both still live in Jackson. They have a dance at the bar in which she kisses Dina for the first time, and the bartender throws some homophobic slurs her way. Joel steps in and punches them, and this is when Ellie starts to forgive him. Now speaking of Dina, it is possible that we see her spying on Ellie when they're first taken in. The girl does look like her, and it sets up a big love interest for the character in Season 2. We also get the horoscope mentioning a secret admirer, which could indeed be her, because horoscopes are definitely real and always spot on. Now this leads us into the tour scene in which Tommy talks about using his rifle to headshot the infected. Ellie asks if he can take her shooting, and at one point in part 2, you go out with Tommy and shoot at the infected using his sniper rifle. We also have the fact that the interrogation technique Joel uses at the start is something that she does in part 2. The way this situation plays out in the game is far bloodier, and Ellie takes the more gruesome approach as well later on. Beyond this, we have Maria talking about betrayal, and Joel somewhat does this with Ellie in the end. He lies to her about what happened with the Fireflies, and she chooses to accept this lie because the truth's too unbearable to think about. There's also the giraffe picture in the room, which could foreshadow the big giraffe scene that happens just before they reach the Fireflies. They're located at St. Mary's Hospital, and we see this on the map that they discover at the university. Lastly, Tommy says there's a place for them, and the pair both of course end up in Jackson after the events of part 1. Anyway, that concludes the episode, and it was nice seeing Jackson fully fleshed out here. Again, I do kind of wish that there was more infected in the show, and it's sad seeing some of your favourite moments from the game don't make the cut. However, I think the performances are really strong here, with Pedro Pascal delivering his best one. He's really added some complexity to Joel, and for the first time, I've started to understand why he wanted to leave Ellie in Jackson. Bella Ramsey, as always, is crushing it as Ellie, and it's difficult to imagine anyone else playing her at this point. She's really nailed it, and I think next week we'll take much more of a focus on her, with us likely getting the Left Behind stuff. I haven't seen the trailer for that, but we will be doing a breakdown of the teaser, so make sure you stay locked. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the episode, so make sure you comment below. We are in a competition right now and giving away the Rocky 4K box set to 3 subscribers on the 15th of March. And all you have to do to be on with a chance of winning is like the video, make sure you subscribe with notifications on, and drop a comment below with your thoughts on the episode. We pick the comments at random on the 15th, and the winners of the last one are on screen right now. So if that's you, message me on Twitter at HeavySpoilers. If you want something else to watch, make sure you check out one of our breakdowns on screen right now. Got a good one, probably, might do. It might be rubbish. But yeah, definitely head over there right after this. By the way, thanks for sitting through the video. I've been Paul. I'll see you next time. Take care. Peace.